Hey everybody, it's Sabrina and welcome back to my channel. I have the next June favorite book to share, and it is Fourth Wing. I'm sure you've heard about it. It is one of the most popular books out there right now, and I hope you will stick with me as I document my journey with this book because it was amazing. It was incredible. There's been a lot of books recently that have a lot of hype with them, and they have not turned out to be exciting for me. Like Mad Honey, I know that book was really popular. That one just didn't work for me. And then Tomorrow, that one was all right, but I felt like it was really almost realistic and like true to life and very philosophical, almost something you'd analyze in a college class. That's what my friend Erica said, and I totally agree with that. So lately, like I said, a lot of books are just not living up to the hype, but this one absolutely did, and it has been a while since I read a fantasy series, and so I was excited to see how this one would go. I am going to go all out with this spread because I absolutely loved this book. It was just incredible. So I took the book cover and I blew it up to the size of the page almost, and then I made a flap so that way it would lift up. I also made a aesthetic board using some images from Pinterest. Most of the images on Pinterest, unfortunately, do not have a credit to who was the original person that made them or found them. But I did find one creator. Her handle on Instagram is called Book Nuts, and she said I could use her images. So I have several of her images in the collage, and also some that I'm going to print out as well. She did an amazing job coming up with a digital creation of both Xander and Violet, the main characters, and so I'm going to use those on the inside. Right now I'm doing another flap, but this time it's going to open like a backwards book. Basically, it's going to open to the right instead of the left, because obviously it can't open to the left because of the spine and coils. And so I just covered the back of it with some paper, since if you noticed earlier, the back of these printed pages have stuff on them because my printer was acting up. Don't we just love it when our printer acts up? It is so frustrating. Mine had ran out of magenta ink and then forgot to notify me, so I just kept on printing and it was terrible. I also grabbed some rose vellum pieces that I had, and I framed in the page the whole spread with pieces torn from that vellum. So there's some up in the left-hand corner and some on the right-hand corner. Another really cool thing that I did and that I came up with is I was having trouble with my printer, as I said, and I couldn't get it to fit the size of the vellum sheet that I had left. It was just a scrap. And so I decided to figure out a way to still use the vellum. And I came up with my clear sticker paper, which is something you guys know that I absolutely love. So I bought a few PNG files on Etsy that were about the Fourth Wing. I may even make a shirt with one of those PNGs. And I loved the quotes on one of them, and also a few different phrases. And then one of them had an eye of the dragon, and so I'm going to use those to kind of build my vellum sheet, and I think it's going to turn out fantastic. I also Googled black outline of a dragon, and I found two that I really liked, so I turned those into PNGs, and I was able to print all of this on clear sticker paper. You can see I just stacked it into a column down the center of the vellum sheet, and then I cleared it off, and so that way I can adhere it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere it to the back of this aesthetic board, but underneath the white paper that's on the back. So I kind of have to do a little slip-in procedure. I wanted to make sure that it was actually going to fit and work before I actually glued it down, and it is going to fit and work. It sticks up like a little itty-bitty smidge, but that's about it. And I also decided to tear the bottom instead of cutting it. I think tearing it makes it look even better, and it goes along with the theme of the vellum, or what I did with the vellum. So at the top of this column, I'll have one of my tiny dragons that I found. Then I'll have one of the most popular quotes, I think, of the book. Then the dragon eye and another dragon facing the opposite direction to the left. And I just trimmed it off so that way the bottom of the dragon hit where the torn vellum was. So absolutely love this idea for vellum, and I may even try this more in the future. And the quote says, "I am the sky and the power of every storm that has ever been. I am infinite." So I love that. And it had two different fonts, so I went ahead and just kind of staggered them next to each other. And then came the dragon eye and the last dragon. There was also some really tiny stars in the PNG files, so I just trimmed those out and then painstakingly peeled them off the paper and added them on top of the vellum insert. So now that insert is all done and I can work on the other pieces for this project. Like I said, there's a lot of different components to this whole entire spread, and I had a lot of fun putting this together over a few days. I drew some light pencil marks so that way I knew where the top and the bottom of my spread was going to be. I wanted to add a dragon and kind of a compass to the inside of my page, but I'm going to come back and do that later on. First, I want to figure out if I want to add some stamping. I love adding stamping. You guys know that I do, and I wasn't sure if I was going to add the stamping or try to keep things simple. At this point in the making of this, I did not know what I was going to do exactly, but as usual, I went with stamping and lots of fun little clusters. I mean, how could I not with this book? It's just incredible. Even if you don't like fantasy, I think it's worth a try. The romance did turn out to be a little spicier than I was expecting. Just being honest with you guys, I don't think it's going to ruin anything, but it's not really in the reviews, but it has some spicy components to it. So as you can see, I came back to the spread and I added some more vellum pieces to the inside to give a little bit more consistency. And so now the folded piece on the right hand side has some vellum, and it just creates a nice really long column of vellum pieces, and same thing with the folded piece on the left hand side. I just wanted to cover up those pieces of paper that were showing for my flap. And then all the images that I have printed were from Book Nuts on Instagram. And I will go ahead and link her account. She does a lot of digital creations for many different fantasy type books, and they're just incredible. Like, I pictured Xander pretty much the way that she depicted him. Same thing with Violet. And that's kind of why I wanted to use them. So as you can see, I grabbed a Star December Daily stamp set, and I'm just stamping all over the place with the bronze ink. I think that's what it's called. Something a little sparkly. And I also added in some brown stars as well, and just went to town stamping anywhere and everywhere. And I will admit that I was worried about whether or not this spread would flow all together with all of my clusters, and because I felt like when I got to the middle of the making of this project, I felt like I had not balanced out all the clusters. But, you know, in the end, I think that this turned out to be a fantastic project of how much I love this book and how much it was just amazing. I just love it, and I cannot wait till the next book, because this type of fantasy book, it literally starts from page 1 and you don't feel like you're lost and like what is going on. There is, you know, the world building, and you are in a made up world, but you totally understand what's going on from page 1, and it is fantastic. I love it. There's even a map in the beginning of the book, but you don't even really need that. You just totally understand what's going on from the get-go. So that is really nice. And Violet is just an incredible character. She has something going on with her that gives her like brittle bones, and she's more prone to falls. And so, you know, she just has to summon a lot of inner and outer strength. And I thought that she was an incredible character for, you know, women and fantasy books in general. I also took a circle cluster stamp and to me it looked similar to scales, and I stamped that in black in various places. I also used a quote that was on the PNGs that said, there's nowhere in existence you could go that I wouldn't find you, Violence. And that is from Xander. And you can see I have his picture, and someone would hear that down. Same thing with the Violet's picture, and I'm going to put that down in the bottom right hand corner. I also have an image of when Violet went to find Xander in a storm, and that again is from Book Nuts. And I added in some more dragons, and as you can see where I put the dragon next to Xander, I put the dragon kind of far away, and I didn't think about that, but I'm going to go ahead and fix that gap later on. I just wanted to think about how I'm going to fix it. I will put the image of them on the precipice. I think that's what it's called, but that's the really narrow bridge that they were on in the beginning of the book. And I also have a large dragon on the left-hand side. And I'm kind of figuring out where I want Violet, but like I said, she's going to wind up down in the bottom right-hand corner, and I love it. The dragons add a lot of different movement, same thing with the layered stamped pieces. So it's really fun to make this journal, and I just love these journaling spreads. I did take one of the dragons down at the bottom of the left page, and I split it. So I had two tiny pieces that went over to the right hand side, and I thought about just not having them, but I really wanted to have the full image of the dragon, so I went ahead and just added them. Erased my pencil lines since I don't need them anymore. I've adhered down all the pieces that I need, and I don't need those. So that was a really easy way to figure out where I need to stop my clusters. All right, so the synopsis, in case you don't know what this book is, the synopsis is this world is brutal and involves a college of dragon riders. Violet Sorrengail is preparing to enter the scribe quadrant, which is kind of all about books and the archives. And now the general, also her mother, commands her to join the Navarro, I think that's how you say it, dragon riders. The riders quadrant is brutal, challenging, and unforgiving. With Violet's small size and prone to her bones breaking, she's worried about how she will survive. She knows she may make enemies, with her mom being the general. One enemy also happens to be the toughest wing leader named Xander Roranson. There is also mounting problems with dragons, bonding to fewer cadets. The war is becoming more deadly, and the protective wards are failing. Will Violet be able to survive despite all the odds stacked against her, and will she know who's her friend or who's her enemy? And I love it. I love this book. It is amazing. And currently I am reading a book called Anatomy that I happened to stumble upon at the library, and I am starting a new audiobook. I think it's nonfiction. It's called Quiet, and it's about introverts. So just starting those books. I decided to go ahead and kind of fix a little bit of the Xander gap, because I said earlier that I didn't like how it was a little big gap between the dragon and the photo of Xander. So I went ahead and stamped both of their names. So I'm going to stamp Xander and also stamp Violet, and I like how that turned out as well. So that way I have their names in there and it's big and prominent. Then I'm going to go ahead and figure out where I'm going to put my thoughts and also my quotes. I mentioned earlier again that because I was adding so many different pieces and so many different clusters, I felt like the spread wasn't going to flow very well. And this is kind of where the point where I was thinking that. But once I get my thoughts down, I realize that I still have a lot of room to put more thoughts in. So again, it's going to work out. And I feel like that's part of the whole process of making and scrapbooking is you have an idea in your head of what you want it to turn out to be, but it just evolves on its own, right? It just changes and you just adapt, and you usually, for the most part, wind up with an awesome project. Okay, so my thought. Number one was that this book absolutely lived up to the hype. I'm very happy with that because I'm getting tired of books that do not live up to the hype. It's very frustrating. I loved how we, the readers, were immediately thrown into this epic world. I loved the character of Violet. And the whole concept of dragons pairing with cadets is just so rad. And there's more components of it, but I don't want to give that away or spoil it. Xander was another fantastic layered character. He's not just some pretty bad boy. There's layered pieces to his story. And also, again, the spice factor was definitely a surprise, but I was good with it. I am going to also fill in that gap over by Xander's photo with the stamping of the genre of fantasy because it had a dragon. And again, I was just trying to come up with a way to honestly fill in that spot. I probably should have printed another dragon or something like that, but I didn't, and I'm not quite sure why. So up here, I am going to put some quotes. And so stick with me because I have a lot of quotes. But really, there is so many different quotes. I took some pictures of the library books. That way I could remember the quotes. And I also used Pinterest for some quotes as well. So the first one is, he's tall with wind-blown black hair and dark brows. When he folds his arms across his torso, the muscles in his chest and arms ripple. His features are so harsh, yet astonishingly perfect. So that's Violet talking about Xander. And then the next one is, you defended the smallest with veracity and strength of courage. And strength of courage is more important than physical strength. And that is Violet's dragon talking to her. And I cannot pronounce the dragon name, so I'm not going to try. But I thought that that was a really poignant quote as well. And then the next one I have is, you look all frail and breakable, but you're really a violent little thing, aren't you? And that's Xander talking to Violet. Another one is, did you ever stop to think that sometimes you can start out on the right side of the war and end up on the wrong side of the war? And that has a lot of different meanings in the book, but I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but it's definitely another layered piece to this story because there's a lot of different components woven into this story, and almost like mini story arcs woven into one book, which was really cool because it's done seamlessly and it's not confusing. The last one is, a dragon without a rider is a tragedy. A rider without a dragon is dead. And that's also a very popular quote as well because it has so much meaning to the entire book. So that side is done, and now I have one last side over on the right-hand side, and I wanted to put a few more thoughts because I ran out of room, and so I just wanted to mention that the dragons were awesome, and there was a lot more depth to the dragons. Like, they're not just dragons. They have family relations and complications within the dragon family. They have thoughts and laws and love, and that was really interesting. I can't remember the last time I've seen like a magical creature having this complexity to it, besides if like you read a children's book or something, like my daughter's Cat Warrior books. The next one is, I just flew through this book and I cannot wait for the Iron Flame that comes out in November. So I have two more quotes. We can live as cowards or die as writers. And the last one is, there is nothing more sacred than the archives. Even temples can be rebuilt, but books cannot be rewritten. So that is all of the quotes, and now I just have a bottom little section to figure out how I'm going to fill that in. I went back and printed out another dragon, and I'm also going to add my rating and just draw my box and add in all those little details as well. I really wanted to find some sort of large stamp in my stash, and I came across an Everyday Explorers one that says this was the best, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. I could have put like love this or here's the story. I think those are my other options that I had, but I figured this was the best is the best option because it was an amazing book. I can't say it enough. And oh, don't forget, in the comment section, you should tell me what you're reading. I would absolutely love to know. So I stamped it, and I don't know how, but it didn't stamp so great, even though I had the book underneath it. So I stamped it again and fussy cut it out, and now I'm just going to glue it on top of the mess up. And once I have that adhered down, I can fill in the little box and my rating. And so my rating is obviously 5 stars. This is 76 out of 100. And so next week for my reading journal video, I'm gonna do a walkthrough of this next quarter. So April, May, and June. So that's gonna be a really awesome, exciting video, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. All right, this is my spread. Turned out incredible. I'm so glad that it just kept evolving and it turned out to be this. I hope you guys have enjoyed seeing this come together. I'd love a thumbs up or a subscribe if you are new to my channel. Bye.